Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Cancer Project podcast. We are really privileged and blessed to have a good friend of mine, Sarah McLean, on today. She's a two-time breast cancer survivor, and she's also the Executive Director of Project31, which is an amazing charity that operates here in Oklahoma and provides support services for women that are going through breast cancer treatment. And so we're going to talk a little bit with her today about her experience going through cancer and then how she's giving back through her role as the founder and director of Project31. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So for those of you that, or for our guests that don't know you that well, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family. I know you have two kids. I think they're both off in college now.
Yes,
is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I have two kids. I was actually diagnosed when I was 26 years old. So I was just telling you before we started that Steve, my husband, and I, we had just moved to Oklahoma City from the Dallas area. And we rolled up on our anniversary. We unloaded the truck, and we went to dinner. And then 6 months later, I was diagnosed. I had done self-exams since I was 18 years old, just because that's what the doctor had taught me to do. Honestly, I didn't think there was any reason for it. But when we first moved here, I didn't know any doctors, and I needed to go for an annual exam. So one of my friends that I had met, she referred me to a doctor. And just like a lot of young women, I was turned away. I had noticed a lump, and she told me it was probably a cyst, just to stop drinking too much caffeine and that kind of stuff. And so I believed her. You know, she was my doctor, and I didn't really know anything else. And so 6 months later, I noticed that it was growing. I could feel it more, and it was tender to the touch. And so I went back again, and being so young, obviously insurance didn't cover it. So I was really going to have to advocate for myself to be able to even get a mammogram. Steve went with me, and the doctor, I felt like she treated me like I was being a hypochondriac. Mm-hmm. And so she finally gave me the referral, and I didn't go because I thought, well, maybe I am overreacting. And so I waited still a little bit longer. Finally, once I was diagnosed, we did catch it early, thankfully. At the time, it was 2003, so there really wasn't a lot of emphasis on psychosocial needs of patients. Mm-hmm. And so really, we call it the pink ribbon roller coaster. So basically at that point I got on the roller coaster, and you're just doing what you got to do to get it out of your body. Mm-hmm. And I went through a survival state at that point, didn't really even know that's what was happening. And so we did a lumpectomy, we're going to have radiation, and I was going to move on with my life and be done with it. Like I said, Steve and I had only been married a year, no mm-hmm. kids. I was working full time at a local church here in Oklahoma, and I got to the end of that, and they biopsied the surrounding tissue, and it had already started to spread through the cavity.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, their recommendation was to do a double mastectomy. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, my mindset was just take them off. Do whatever you got to do to get it out of my body. And now, being in this world for so long, realizing as a patient, you don't know what you don't know. And it's so important to have community around you of other people who've walked the walk that we've mm-hmm. walked. And so at that point, I didn't know anybody, and I was terrified. And so Steve and I made the choice, I'm going to go ahead and do the double mastectomy. And you're forced to make these life-changing decisions that there's no way for you to know the repercussions of these decisions that you're being forced to make in such a short amount of time. And so I chose to go ahead and do it. It was November of 2003, and I went through the mastectomy, and I decided to do implant reconstruction. I didn't really understand what all of that was going to entail mm-hmm. either. That's its own, journey itself. But I got to the end of it, and I was so grateful to be cancer-free. And I thought, man, this has been a long journey. I mean, cancer is such a long ride anyway. And so at that point, I thought, all right, let's move on with life, and I was going to get back to normal, mm-hmm. not realizing, again, I didn't know what I didn't know, that there's a new normal. And so I found myself imploding emotionally. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to put words to what I was feeling. I'm definitely more of an introvert by nature, definitely more introspective. But my husband and I, we were still fighting over silly things. The toothpaste, the toilet paper, mm-hmm. That kind of silly stuff. Well, I didn't know how to get out what I was feeling. When I looked in the mirror, I wasn't the same person anymore. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know how to relate to myself. So I didn't know how to say that to him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and I'll be vulnerable and just say, as a Christian woman, I think I had a lot of pride too, that I should be able to handle things a certain way. And I put a lot of pressure on myself that because I am a Christian, I believe in God, I have faith, but yet my emotions, this felt really hard, and I didn't know how to reconcile that. And so my husband was calling everywhere, trying to find a resource for us to go speak with someone, because nobody had talked to me about that. I felt like the doctors did an excellent job of diagnosing me, of helping me to have options, of getting it out of my body. But beyond that, I'm a full person here, mind, body, spirit. There was nothing beyond the physical part to give us resources of how to walk through this journey. And so finally, Steve found a psychologist who happened to be a survivor. And he was like, "We're going." And I was like, "No, we're not." And so it was like definitely a fight. And I went like kicking and screaming, really. And so the day that we went into her office, I remember sitting there, and honestly, she just started to share her story with me. And it was so eye-opening because everything that she was saying, that was me. And she was basically validating everything that I had been going through, and I'd been grieving, and I didn't know it. I didn't understand that there's a lot of layers of grief that come along with the cancer journey. But as she was sharing with me, obviously it was comforting to me, but at the same time, she was basically interpreting to Steve everything that I had been feeling that I didn't know how to get out to him. And so it was eye-opening for him as well. So he was like, "Oh, that's what's happening here." So then through our time with her, I really felt a burden to come alongside other survivors and their families. I was like, why is nobody talking about this? Why did not anybody say anything to me that this was going to be maybe a part of my journey? Just to know that I'm not crazy, and that there are other people who understand, and it's okay to not be okay. And so at that point, we went to her for quite a while, and I got pregnant at the same time. And so I didn't even know if I was going to be able to have kids, and thankfully I got pregnant, and I had my son in 2004, and then when he was 6 months old, I got pregnant again. And I had my daughter in 2006. So I'm just bebopping through life at that point. We're going to counseling, really feel like I'm getting some healing in my own life, have kids, I'm working full time, but there was still something missing. I just felt like there have to be so many people out here that are hurting, that need to be aware of resources that could be available to them through counseling. And so in 2007, Steve and I decided, we need to do something to give back. And so we honestly just took money out of our savings and got established as a 501c3. And initially what I wanted to do was to provide an opportunity to survivors and their families, because I realized this just wasn't me. This was my husband as well, but for other families who did have children, it was their kids too. It was a whole family being impacted in their own unique way. And so I just was like, we all need to be able to have an opportunity to be able to have healing. And so we got established, and I at that point, because of HIPAA, I was like, okay, what am I going to do to be able to meet patients? And so I just started having these little gatherings of people who were in my life, sharing with them kind of what I was wanting to do and how I wanted to give back to others. And surprisingly, people started giving me money. And I was like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And I was like, okay, great. And so I realized, I felt like at an imaging center or an oncology office would probably be the best connecting point for survivors coming, year after year for their scans or for mammograms. And so I just started sending letters across the state and saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. I had created a care package basically as a bridge to be able to give to the center. They basically would give the gift to the survivor, and then they would give them a release so that way I could contact them. And so it was very organic, very slow, and that was okay because I was still going through my own journey. I think we always are, but for me at that point, I didn't have a lot of emotional margin to give any more back than that. And so at that point, I started getting some phone calls, and I just started sending these packages out. And I was like, all right, this is great. And honestly, it really gave me purpose in my pain. I feel like, not everyone, but I think a lot of people, it needs to mean something. You don't go through this for nothing. And that's what I needed. And so fast forward to 2011, I I was approached by one of the cancer centers here in the city, and they asked me if I would consider leading a peer support group.
Okay.
And to be quite honest, I was like, no.
Right.
Heck no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because honestly, in my own mind, I'd really stereotyped a support group to be a place that was really more negative, toxic in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's not really what I'm about. I really want to create environments where people are educated, where they're empowered, where they're given hope. And regardless of their stage 0 to 4, like, we can still have hope to the very day that we meet Christ, you know? And so I thought about it, and I was like, you know, I really felt like I was supposed to do that. And so in 2011, it was May, we show up to this cancer center, and I was like, all right, I know how to lead a small group. I was like, we're just going to do the same thing there. And so 20 plus ladies came that night. And for me, I was like, wow, there are hurting people out here, and they want to talk about their story, and they need a place to come amongst other women who understand what they're going through. As patients, I feel like a lot of times we hold a lot in, because I know for me, I was protecting my husband and my children emotionally, and I didn't want to share everything sometimes because I didn't want to upset them any more than they already were. And so I needed a space to be able to be vulnerable and honest, but also to gain comfort and encouragement too. So we show up, and it was a great night, and I was like, all right, we're going to keep doing this. And so it was one group at the time. So fast forward to that August of 2011, I continued to do self-exams, even though I had had a double mastectomy. I knew that they couldn't get every cell. And so I had noticed something on my right side over here. I thought it was scar tissue.
Right.
And I thought, you know, I'll just tell them. They said, have you noticed any changes? And I was like, well, yeah, I noticed this spot over here. They were like, well, let's go ahead and ultrasound that before we do your MRI. And I was like, all right. So ironically, I was in the same room I had been in 8 years before.
Oh, wow.
So I'm laying in the room, and she puts the ultrasound on there, and I could tell by the look on her face, she knew that it was cancer.
Wow.
And so she's like, I'm going to be right back. I said, okay. And so I just laid there, and I looked at the ceiling, and I was just like in disbelief, honestly.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
And so she comes back in, and she's like, we're going to go ahead and biopsy it. And I said, all right. And so she's like, we'll call you in the next couple of days. I was like, okay. So the next day I was in Target, and I was shopping for care packages. I was just buying stuff to make these care packages. And they called me, and they said, Sarah, I'm so sorry, but it's cancer again.
Yeah.
And I said, and at that time I was 34. And I said, okay. And she just explained to me what the next steps would be. And so I went to the car, and I just sat there for a while. And I just talked to God, and I was like, I really don't get this.
Yeah.
And I really felt like God spoke to me in that moment, and he said, Sarah, this is not a hobby for you. This is a calling on your life. And I believe that, you know, we're all created for a purpose, and God knows every moment that we have here on this earth. And for me, it's to give him glory and to spread his hope to all his people. And this was going to be a way for me to do that. And honestly, I felt really inadequate to be able to even step into that space, because, like, who am I? Like, so many of the women around me, their journeys are so much different than mine. At the same time, though, that doesn't mean that we can't share hope. That doesn't mean that we can't still encourage one another and walk with each other. And so at that point, I was like, okay. So I finished treatment, and I gave my notice at the church where I was working, and I knew that I was going to start moving forward to dedicate my life to this journey. And so from then until now, I can proudly say that we collaborate with over 10 hospitals across the state of Oklahoma, providing peer support through small groups and communities in each of these hospitals. We have a leadership team of over 20 survivors on the team. We do online communities now. We have a group specifically for thrivers who are stage 4 patients. Also expanding just outside of the state now with our care packages, and also with different people who are able to log in. You know, honestly, through COVID, I was a little bit nervous because I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. But we were able to go online pretty seamlessly because we had already had private Facebook communities of over 1,000 women online. So it was really easy just to jump on. And honestly, people need more support than ever during that time, obviously, because you're being diagnosed, you're still treating, but you're alone. And so we grew more than we ever had during that time. And so it's just continued to grow throughout the years. And I'm just so proud and glad to be able to bring people together and allow them to share their stories and to be able to encourage each other, because this is never about me. It's really just honoring and lifting others up to be able to share their own story, to have purpose in their own story.
Right.
And thankfully it's working.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at now. But yeah, like you said, back to your original question. So
No, that was amazing.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
a long
that's-
answer,
yeah.
but my kids are 19
Yeah.
and 20 now.
Yeah.
They're in college. I'm so grateful to be here to see them and to see them flourishing too. It's a pretty awesome season.
So going back to that point in 2003, I think is when you said you were
Diagnosed.
first diagnosed. One of the things that I know that you talk a lot about with the women that come into Project 31 now is how to communicate to your spouse
Right.
and your loved ones.
Yes.
What was it like talking to Steve, your husband? Because I mean, you get, like you said, you're in your mid-20s, you just got married, you're excited about life, and then suddenly there's this massive interruption. What were those conversations like? And then maybe what are some things that you've learned over the years that you communicate to women now about how to talk to your spouse and your family about what you're going through?
It's a good question. I feel like obviously we're all unique, and so it's going to be different for everyone. I think it does matter how long you've been married, I think, because I have noticed a difference between younger patients versus women who've been married a long time. There is definitely a difference there. However, I have noticed across the board that whatever trauma you've experienced in your life prior to your diagnosis, it usually is a catalyst to come out
Okay.
at that time. And all that to say, it can be very overwhelming because you have all this emotion, and it might not even be just attached to the cancer. It might be all this other unprocessed stuff. And so for me, I think being an introvert, like I said, I would definitely recommend for people to find a therapist to work with, to be able to not only identify what are you feeling in the moment, but to give it words. Because I do feel like there's a huge disservice to caretakers. They are going through their own trauma, and there's literally no attention given to them most of the time. They're just kind of in the background, but still taking care of the family, still trying to like work and, provide for their family. So I feel like there needs to be an awareness that we're going through this together. Yes, we are the ones doing the treatment, and yes, we are, feeling a lot of pain. However, our family members, they're giving a lot too, and they're experiencing a different kind of pain. So I think just an empathy for one another. I think grace for sure to each other. I think because it's obviously so highly emotional and highly triggering. And so depending on how you communicated prior to this, unfortunately, I see a lot of couples that it doesn't work. And
Right.
it makes me really sad.
Right.
And that's why it is important to me to bring awareness to it, first of all. And if you know that you're struggling, find help. Make sure that you go and get some tools, because nobody knows how to do this.
Right.
Like, it's not like you got a Cancer 101,
Right.
workbook.
Right.
So find some help. Try to learn some communication skills, extending grace to one another. I know, like for Steve and I, we got a second time to figure it out.
Yeah.
I knew the second time, like if I was having a hard day, because I would take out my emotion on him a lot of times, and he's like, what did I do?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I'm having a hard time right now, so he might take the kids after school and go get ice cream or whatever, because I just needed some moments to myself.
Yep.
And then he could come back around, and I had words to it this time, whereas the first time I would just react. And so, but all that came from going to counseling and learning some tools. I think the grace part, because it is really scary, and breast cancer, I feel like, is a little bit different too, because of the way that it affects your intimate relationship. So you've heard me say, I feel like it just tries to steal every part of who God designed us to be as a woman, from our hair, fertility, breast, intimacy, everything of how he created us to be as a woman, but then how we relate to one another. And so I think it's really important to continue to be open and honest, and ride the roller coaster, because from moment to moment you're feeling one way. I think it's important to give your partner space to be honest too. I think because sometimes they don't want to be honest with their fear, because
Right.
they're afraid they're going to scare us.
Right.
But I think that it's mutual respect of where are we and checking in with each other. It was weird. Like, I looked through my phone. I don't know. I was cleaning my phone up, and my second time, I decided I was going to, like, I was going to vlog it,
Okay.
just for myself personally, like a vlog journal. And I went back and I realized, Steve and I, what we would do in the evening time, we would sit down in bed and we would just turn the phone on and we would kind of recap the day.
Okay.
And it was really weird,
Yeah.
to look back at that and to see our facial expressions and just to see where we were emotionally. But I felt like that was really healthy, though, because it helped us to process. Keeping it out is really important. I know that's a long-winded answer, but I feel like there's no amount of tools that
Right.
you couldn't learn to be able to be a better communicator in your relationship.
Right. And a little bit of it is just taking it day by day. Because
Absolutely.
each day,
Moment by moment
Moment by
sometimes.
moment, right.
Shoot.
what are some things that you and Steve, because I know Steve does a great job too of talking to spouses and hey,
Yeah.
these are the things that I screwed up and these are the things that
Yeah.
maybe I did well. What are some of those things that you would recommend or that Steve would recommend to spouses to be thinking about? You mentioned, hey, just take the kids and go get ice cream. Give me a few moments alone. What else are recommendations
I'm
for
laughing
spouses?
because I know exactly what he would say.
Yeah.
He's going to say, just get naked. He
Oh,
would
yeah.
say, and it's true, because
Yeah.
I remember one of our first groups we were in, he was telling the girls, like, as soon as you get comfortable being naked in front of your own new body,
Yeah.
it's going to help him to feel more comfortable.
Right.
And I know it sounds weird, but it's true because we're both getting used to this here, And so I would say that. But secondly, men, I feel like he would say they try to fix it, control it, or they have nothing to do with it.
Right.
And, as our partners and our spouse, obviously God's designed you guys to be our protectors. And so I can only imagine how hard that must be. And to know, like, sometimes if there is something you want to fix, our home is like our sanctuary.
Right.
We are the wife and the mother, and I know for me, like, I like my home in a certain order. And when you're trying to recover, you can't do all the things that you want to be able to do. So I think being attentive to her, how does she want her home? Like Steve would say, like, I like the dishes done a certain way.
Right.
I like the laundry done a certain way. Like, don't do it your way, do it
Right.
her way. And she's the CEO of that house. And so when you come in, don't try to fix her process.
Right.
Come in and appreciate her process. And so
Right.
I would recommend that. Ask her, what is it that I can do for you? It's a hard part, too, for survivors, for us to come to a place. I know for me, it's really humbling to know that you can't do everything that you did before. But a lot of time I try to encourage girls to, like, get to a place of where you allow people the opportunity to be a blessing to you because they want to do anything they can to be helpful. So the same way with your husband, like, and even the kids, like, so for my kids, I tried to include them to be a part of the process. So, like, the second time, giving them jobs to do. So Tatum, she would do my drains and she'd
Right.
get to log it every day. And so she knew that was her job. So,
And
like,
she would have been, what,
5.
7? Oh, 5. Okay.
yeah.
Right.
I missed her first day of kindergarten. I was in surgery. So letting them be a part of it, giving them something to do. Don't take away opportunities for them to be the blessing. The control part, I think, it comes back to that communication is really important. And then allowing them to be a part of it with you. I feel like a lot of times, because there is so much emphasis on us, that, like I said, they get pushed to the wayside. And so that's why I think sometimes that disconnect can happen. They become a little bit disconnected. Invite them to the treatment with you. Let them
Right.
be a part of it. Include them.
Right.
Because sometimes you're like, no, I can do it. No,
Yeah.
well, okay. Like, you don't need me.
Yeah.
No, we need to reiterate, I need you. We are in this together.
Right.
And so I think it's that constant encouragement of one another.
I think one of the things that I picked up on there was just a vulnerability
Oh, for
on
sure.
the part of both people, but also it sounds like on the part of the patient. I mean, you kind of joke about, getting comfortable in your own skin, but that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
What are some pieces of advice that you give to patients as they're thinking about going through the horrors of getting cut on and carved up and chemotherapy and losing hair? How are you telling people to try to approach that?
That's a hard question.
Yeah.
Again, Everybody's different, of course, but I would say the vast majority of people that I get to talk to, I think it depends on what you've done in your treatment process too. So some do chemo, some don't. Some have reconstruction, some don't. Everybody has personal choices, but I would say just generally across the board, being naked, of course, getting comfortable with yourself. But if you're done reconstruction, I would recommend looking at doing areola tattooing. I hear a lot of girls say, well, I don't need that. And I'm like, well, you might not, but what about him? That might help him to feel more comfortable. And to my husband's credit, like, it wasn't about him.
Right.
It was me.
Right.
I was the one that had a problem. I couldn't get comfortable with it. But once I did that, it helped me feel normal. It doesn't look normal. It doesn't feel normal.
Right.
But in the mirror, it's like this illusion. And so psychologically, it just helped me to embrace myself a little bit better. I tell girls sometimes, I know a lot of people wear wigs, some don't. I think being honest with your partner, like you said, the vulnerability part is important because we both have needs, but I think it's appreciating where we are. If you don't feel well, obviously, you're not going to lean into that. But there's a lot of resources available to you. We work with not a lot, I would say several sex therapists that help you because a lot of the treatments that we do specific to breast cause vaginal atrophy. And so not only are you dealing with this part and the hair part, then your vagina dries up.
Right.
So then you're like, what am I going to do now? And so, again, it's that vulnerability. Nobody wants to talk about that,
Right.
but you've got to. That's how you have healing. That's how you continue to grow in your intimacy, I think, because if you're not talking about it, then it's just getting swept under the rug, and that's just causing more distance. And so, like you said, you have to keep it open. So that would be what my recommendation would be.
What do you tell somebody, because a lot of what you're talking about, these are sensitive, private topics.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think you talked a little bit about, it was actually Steve who had to convince you to go to a
Yeah.
psychologist early on after the first diagnosis. What do you tell women that are like, I don't want to do the support group thing. I'd rather just get through treatment and then move on and not really talk about all these things that are happening? What's your advice to someone who's coming at this process with that approach?
That would have been me.
Right.
I wouldn't have done that. But, honestly, now over time, what I've realized is that there's healing that comes, a certain level of healing, I think, that comes only through community. So that's why support groups are so important to me. And a lot of girls are like, I don't need that. I don't really want that. But sometimes it's because I don't think they give it a chance either. Because we don't, the way we design our groups, it's not about just coming and singing Kumbaya.
Right.
We have intentionality behind it. So you're going to come and you're going to hear from an expert in whatever subject matter we may be talking about that night. But it's through that time that you start hearing stories, you start hearing different perspectives, you start hearing how people have approached different things. And through that, it gives you encouragement. It gives you things to try, and you're like, oh man, okay, and you're validated also. And so I would really recommend, and honestly, like originally when I said, your body naturally goes into a survival state. I love for girls when I first meet them, if they will engage in our community from the get-go, I feel like it really can change the trajectory of what the journey could look like rather than waiting until the end. Because for me, I got to the end of the physical part, and then all this this part comes to the surface, and I'm like, what do I do now? So it was a year later when I started imploding. And so if I would have been learning this stuff along the way, I could have been kind of processing as I went rather than it just blowing up. So people are intersecting at different points. Ideally, I want them at the beginning so we can help them have these tools. But if not, maybe they come at the end. Because sometimes people reach out to us and they're like, I'm still struggling. I'm like,
Right.
Totally get it.
Right.
And that's not foreign, and you're not crazy. But I would recommend people just to give it a try, at least see what we're about, because I think you have to overcome the stereotype too, because I think so many times people are like, oh man, I just don't want to hear people whine about cancer. But I promise you that's not what we are
Right.
about. We really want to be an encouragement to you. And so, and the caretakers as well. It's not just about survivors.
Right.
Like, husbands are welcome to come too. And it's so awesome when you see the husband coming with his wife, and he's able to hear other perspectives, but also he's able to interject too. And I love to see that.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about the survivorship process. You were diagnosed and treated in 2003. There's probably a point after that treatment where you think, okay, it's not coming back. Then it does come back 8 years later. But then now you're still on this survivorship journey where you've gone through treatment twice.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always that little voice in the back of your head
Mm-hmm.
scaring you, maybe thinking, what is this side effect? What is this symptom? What is this lump? What is that like for somebody who has not gone through cancer treatment? Try to explain what that's like, going through cancer treatment and then living with that
Right.
beyond treatment.
As you know, I'm passionate about survivorship, and I don't think that term hasn't really been a hot topic
Mm-hmm.
for several years now. It's just, I feel like, becoming more prevalent. But survivorship really in our world is once you finish active treatment. So what is, and for thrivers, that's going to be for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So survivorship to me is, what am I doing to maintain wellness and quality of life for the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, yeah, I was diagnosed 2003, but this will affect me for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Is it at the forefront of my mind every day? Not necessarily. Obviously, it's a reminder because I see it in the mirror. But for example, I'm 22 years out from my
Right.
first diagnosis. I just had reconstruction in November.
Right.
So there's residual effects that come from different treatments we do, different surgeries we do, and
explain, again, for those that have not gone through this journey, that are trying to understand the reality of what you have gone through,
Mm-hmm.
what did that mean? So you had to do this reconstruction.
Yeah.
Why did you have to do that? What was that process like?
So in 2003, I did it because, and again, everybody has a personal choice. There's multiple different options of different types of reconstruction you can do. There's implant reconstruction. There's people who want to stay flat. Then there's also different kinds of flap surgeries where they're going to take tissue from a different part of your body and create breasts out of your own tissue. So I chose implant reconstruction. Well, typically those don't really last beyond 10 years. You want to continue to have MRIs, make sure that the integrity of the implant is not breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, over 10 years, I got diagnosed again.
Right.
Well, when I radiated a reconstructed breast, I knew that I would be high risk for what's called capsular contracture. So basically, when that radiation is on an implant,
Mm-hmm.
it's a foreign object in your body. That radiation can cause the scar tissue around that implant to start to thicken and harden. And so over time, it just starts to squeeze and it gets really painful and hard. And so in 2014, in my mind, I thought, okay, I'm just going to let this go as long as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just go in and again, as a patient, I'm in my mind making up this whole scenario, what I think they're going to do to me.
Right.
I'm like, I'm just going to wait as long as I can, and then I'll go in and they will just cut the implant out, clean all that scar tissue out, put a new implant in, and then they'll sew me up and I'll just move on.
Right.
That's what I thought I was waiting for. So I go to have a consultation in 2014, and the surgeon was like, well, no, that's not how it's going to work. Because you've been radiated, that radiation kills the blood supply to that tissue.
Okay.
And so if we were to take the implant out, try to put a new one in, and then sew your skin, it's not going to heal because there's
Okay.
no blood supply to heal the tissue. And so I'm learning along the way too.
Right.
So I'm like, well, what does that mean? What am I going to do?
Right.
And they were like, well, we're going to have to take healthy tissue and blood supply from another part of your body. So then at that point, as a patient, you're trying to figure out, well, what's the best option for me? I don't know. At the time when I did it, deep flaps were not as common as they are now.
Right.
So I did a latissimus flap. So we did part of my lat muscle off my back and tissue off my back and brought it to the chest. And they had to reconnect all those hoses of blood vessels
Wow.
to make the tissue heal.
Right.
And so then we had to put tissue expanders in, redo the whole thing all over again.
Wow.
So to your point, this is an ongoing thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in 2014. Well, it's 11 years later.
Okay.
So over time now, underneath, I had gotten a lot of nerve impingement. All these nerves got intertwined because I didn't know I should have been going to physical therapy to break
Okay.
up all that scar tissue all this time, because radiation it's a gift that keeps giving.
Right.
And so it kept getting harder and harder, and I didn't know I needed to be having somebody manually break that up.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm learning along the way
Right.
too. And so as I started working on it, I literally couldn't touch my skin without just having extreme nerve pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, my quality of life, I can't even really move my arm. Like, what am I going to do?
Right.
So I went and had a consult again, and the surgeon was like, well, we can cut all that out. And so again, I'm having to do that again. Hopefully I wanted to do that again. I'm
Right.
trying to be more intentional about my physical therapy now because
Right.
I know, okay, I need to stay on top of it. This is fresh. I know scar tissue I learned a lot about how scar tissue lays down, how it's thicker and harder. It's like a weld. I'm like, I got to break that up, so I'm learning these things along the way. Again, why community is so important. You need to learn new things. And my quality of life too. When you did a lat flap, your core is compromised. Like my body's like compromised at that point. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't understand okay, you need to be doing certain exercises to build your core in a certain way. Like the residual effects of that long term can be pretty devastating if you don't know. Combined with the different treatments that you do. To me, we should have like a baseline once you get done with active treatment, or even like we were talking about before, like integrative therapy, bringing things in to boost your immunity. So B12 down, D3 down, testosterone down, like all the things. Like what can we be doing to help you be as optimal as possible for your body to have the best environment to heal? And then beyond that, continuing to learn now, a lot of trauma work. A lot of women, they have trauma now, learning about EMDR. What are different resources available to them that they can to work through their trauma now?
Right.
There's a plethora of different things. We could go on and keep talking about it. But for me, the overall definition would be just really having that wellness and quality of life long term.
Right. So that kind of segues into a term that I think is a beautiful term, and it's one that you use to describe women who are living with cancer. So it's a metastatic disease. It's probably never going to go away. And these are the women that you call thrivers.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what that means. What is a thriver, and what is your encouragement and hope for these women?
So thrivers, like you said, are the women who are stage 4 that probably are going to have a different life expectancy than others. But the majority of the ladies that I know prefer to use that terminology rather than survivor, because a lot of them have come to the realization that their life is going to look different. And they believe that they are thriving every day that they're alive. They are fighting, and I respect that. And so, David, it's very humbling to be in that community. I get on with our thrivers, and these are some of the most amazing people that I've ever met in my life. I was just with a friend earlier this week. To be honest, I don't know how she does it every day. She's a single mother. She's not even 40 years old yet. And to see her tenacity, her resilience, her strength, she never complains. But at the same time, though, she is not in denial of the reality of her situation.
Right.
And that's why I say earlier, like, who am I to try to even do something for these people? But that's not the point. It's really about community and us coming together, encouraging it. I can't say that enough, because hope is transcendent. And until the day that we go to heaven, we can still maintain hope. We can still trust that God knows every day that's planned out for us. And so I learn from them. I don't feel like I have a lot to offer them, but just showing up. I think a lot of times too, as survivors, we suffer a lot. Those of us who aren't thrivers, there's a whole term called survivor's guilt. Like, well, why them and not me?
Right.
And we'll never know the answer to that. But at the same time, though, I can be present. And I think that's what I've learned more than anything.
Yeah.
I don't have to have the words.
Right.
I don't have to have the answers, but I can show up.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to do.
Well, in your presence, I mean, I know that I've talked to you on some of the most difficult days, because they're days where you're literally up at the hospital and somebody is at the point where they may not have much time left, and yet you're willing to show up and talk to them. And even when maybe family members are done, they can't take what's about to happen, and you're there for them. I don't know how you do it, to be honest.
Well, I mean, you're in this world too.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be something that we would have necessarily chosen to do. That's why I say, and I don't say that pridefully. because it is a hard job, but I do believe that, I don't know. I mean, you know who I am as a person, and I never feel that God leaves us. We're never alone. And if I get to be a representative of him, to be with somebody, and that's what I want to do, because I felt so alone in my journey that I never want anybody else to feel that way.
Right.
And so that's why I am going to do my best effort to be there, and especially in those moments, because that's when it counts, I mean, I've told you before, there was a woman, a good friend of mine, I went to church with her, and she had gone through her initial diagnosis, was doing great. A year later, it metastasized, and I remember it was New Year's Eve, and I had gone to church that morning, and she was on my heart, and I reached out to her and just said, "Hey, how are you?" She's like, "I'm not doing great. Could you come pray for me?" And I was like, "Sure." So a board member and I went to her house, and she was there with her adult daughters, and I could tell her body was shutting down. And so we were just there to visit with her, and I prayed for her, and I really felt like there was a letting go for her daughters and for her. And so that night, the older daughter who I had been communicating with called me, and she was like, "Sarah," she's like, "my mom tells me she's ready to go, but her grandparents were like, we're here to fight for your healing." And she's like, "But my mom's saying she's ready to go." And I said, "That's okay. Your grandparents just aren't there yet." And I said, "You can tell your mom if she's ready. That's okay." And so then she's like, "I'm so sorry to bother you." I was like, "You're not bothering me."
Yeah.
And so then we got off the phone. The next morning, she texted me and she said, "Hey, we've been up with her all night, but she's finally resting." She's like, "But could you come up and pray in the afternoon?" And I was like, "Sure." And I get off the phone, and I was like, what am I going to say? And I really felt like God was saying to me, "I want you to usher her into heaven."
Wow.
And I was like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
I was like, I don't even know how to do that. Like, what? And so I got off the phone, and I called my Steve, and I was like, "Babe, you're going with me." So in that afternoon, this is the first time this has ever happened. And so that afternoon, we went to the hospital, and I'm sure the whole family thought I was crazy. And so we walk in there. I don't know any of them. And she's laying there, and her father was next to her, and I go over and just was rubbing her little bald head and telling her how beautiful she was. And I felt like I was supposed to turn on worship music. And so I turned it on, and the song was "Come to Me."
Wow.
And so I just laid it by her head, and the priest came in and took the whole family in the hallway. And so Steve and I were the only ones in the room with her.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
And so then as soon as the song was over, the priest had come in, and they all gathered around as a family around her. And Steve and I just stepped back, and they said the Lord's Prayer. And as soon as they said amen, she passed.
Yeah. Wow.
And for me, I was just like, wow. It was a very humbling moment. And I was just like, okay. And that day, though, I felt like when I left, God was like, "I want you to get comfortable with the transition into eternity." And I didn't really know what that meant. I still don't know what that means, but time and time again now, that's what keeps happening. And so, I don't know. I'm just trying to walk it out just like everybody, I don't know. I just take it one day at a
Well,
time.
and the biggest thing, Sarah, again, is that you're there, and you've created this beautiful community of people, of women that are encouraging each other. You're encouraging them. And sometimes it's just being the facilitator. I mean, you're just facilitating these connections and these interactions. And then, of course, there's the times like you just talked about where you're literally there ushering someone in to the other side. And I look back at your journey, and it's amazing to think about you at 26 getting diagnosed with cancer, and then a few years later thinking, well, maybe I should give back, but I don't know what that looks like.
Right.
You were still working full time. You had young kids, and then to see what that's evolved into now, it's really a beautiful story. And I don't think that there's many stories like that across the country. And I know there's not. There's lots of great charities across the country, but there's very few that are like Project31, where they're just this organic, grassroots, local charity, but that's ministering so effectively to so many people. And it's really been, you guys have been a blessing to us at the Oklahoma Proton Center and the patients that we've treated. And patients we know that patients do better going through treatment when they have a community.
Mm-hmm.
And we tell patients that, but you are that community for women going through breast cancer treatment so that they can get through this arduous process a little bit better
Mm-hmm.
Than they otherwise would if that community didn't exist. So talk a little bit about, I know one of the other things that you're passionate about is, I'm going to use the term legislation, but it's really
Advocacy.
Advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a better term, is advocacy. What needs to happen so that women continue to have the best and right access to care possible? I think we were talking a little bit about this initiative that you're
Mm-hmm.
working on with
National Breast Cancer Coalition.
and with Stephanie Bice. But talk a little bit about advocacy and some of your efforts there and some things that you're really hoping to see happen over the next couple of years.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you to you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you personally, your personal friend, but also Oklahoma Proton Center and Premier have been such a blessing to us because honestly, without you, we can't do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say it's a collaboration, it truly is a collaboration because of HIPAA and all of that. Like, I can't do my work.
Right.
And so because you get it, that's why we're able to meet more patients. And you've given us so many opportunities throughout the years in multiple different ways. And so I just want to publicly say thank you to you.
Well, thank you, Sarah.
And you get it. Like, and I love that about the Proton Center too, because it's just different. You're able to function in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. And I don't feel like anything's too hard for you too. You're always willing to try new things. And
well, I think part of what we bonded over is just a passion to make a difference.
Yeah.
Like, the status quo is never okay.
Right.
Like, how are we continuing to get better treatments and advocacy and mental health services
Yeah.
and integrative oncology today? It doesn't look like it did in 2003.
Right.
And I hope it doesn't look the same in 2026 or 2030 or 2040. Like, we just need to continue to
do better.
be doing better for patients.
Right, absolutely.
Because cancer is probably, unfortunately, not going away anytime soon, and just about everybody has been impacted, whether it's themselves directly or a family member or a friend. But it takes a team.
Absolutely.
And it takes people working together to accomplish the goals of women thriving during and after treatment, survivorship, and just better outcomes for patients. Early diagnosis is obviously important.
Well, back to your point about advocacy.
Yeah.
So, yes, definitely. I mean, I think that's the whole reason that I started this, and it's evolved over time, like you said. And I think that I'm trying to adapt as we continue to grow. We've had some opportunity with the National Breast Cancer Coalition through our community now because I think, have been diligent and steadfast in building our community here in the city. It's allowed us an opportunity to have a voice, which is an amazing opportunity. And so on a national level, it's this coalition that comes alongside local organizations to represent the community to their local legislators. And so recently we've been working on providing metastatic patients a voice to be able to share their stories to change a Medicaid bill. Currently, the way it stands, unfortunately, metastatic patients, if they want to apply for disability, they have to be metastatic for 5 months before they're even eligible to apply. Once they apply, they have to wait 24 months before they're even able to get services. So that's nuts. So, but now we have a community, so these women can get on, they can share their personal story. That's amazing to be able to do that. I'm so honored to be able to have that privilege. But beyond that, too, I keep saying it over and over again, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And we have to educate people. So part of that advocacy is education. That's why we've started doing an annual expo to provide more of a public kind of conference type platform for people who don't want to come to a support group type setting. They can come to the conference and basically hear all the same type of knowledge that you would be getting there. So, and meeting different vendors in the local community, bringing people together, showing people what's available to them, but explaining to patients, you have a voice, you have a choice. I didn't know any of that. And so And oftentimes you don't know that until somebody's telling you that. So again, that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I want people to know you do have a choice. It is your body, that you can look at different options, and trying to always be learning, always be aware of different things that are available, so that I can be a funnel, like you said, a connector. I feel like that's one of the things I do well, I think, is trying to connect people, and that's what I want to keep doing.
And so specifically with this legislation, what we'd like to see happen is shorten the period of time from the point of being diagnosed with metastatic cancer to actually being able to enroll on Medicaid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because a lot of times the women who are in need of that aid, they might not be here by the time they've actually completed the eligibility time frame.
Yeah,
so,
it seems warped.
Right.
That if you've been diagnosed with metastatic cancer, you should be eligible as soon as possible.
Well, and the importance of, like, I was speaking with the representative on the Hill just before I came here, and she said the hard part is that, Republicans think one way and Democrats think the other. And Republicans want to know how much is it going to cost. Democrats want to know, like, well, we don't have the resources to be able to do that. So it's like they're opposing one another. But at the same time, we need to see people and hear their voice and see the story, see the impact of someone's life.
Right.
And so it's important.
So before we go, and thank you so much for your time today, Sarah, this has been amazing. What are you hoping to see happen with Project31 over the next couple of years? What are some of you think big, what are some of your big visions for 2026 and beyond?
Well, and you and I have talked about this before, but my vision is for us to be a national organization. Obviously, that takes time and effort. It has been a grassroots initiative and definitely organic. I think it's been kind of a slow growing process, which I'm okay with because I think it's been sustainable. I think if it would have grown too fast, I don't know if I would have been able to stick it out, but I see us growing beyond the state of Oklahoma. I already see a few little things on the horizon that I think maybe open doors, along with the National Breast Cancer Coalition, these different organizations that are popping up that are learning about us. I'm just kind of waiting to see how that plays out. But ideally, I'd like us to have a national presence. I'd love to be able to partner with other hospitals. But again, because of what we do, and it is peer-to-peer, I'm very selective on our leadership team.
Right.
These women have to go through their own journey. They have to get to a place where they are able to give back, not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually too. So they have to go through their own healing process. So the vetting process that we go through with our leaders is pretty extensive and timely. And so we don't want to rush that either. So we take our time with that, but I'm hopeful that some other partners will prop up.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so if someone wanted to access services with Project31, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can go to project31.com.
Okay.
That's our website. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Okay. Well, Sarah, thank you so much again for your time today and for sharing and for everything that you're doing for our patients and for patients across Oklahoma and then hopefully nationally as well in the near future. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.